Okay guys, a lot of you asked for my review on Shogun, and I'm going to give it to you, but remember that this is just one guy's opinion. I'm sure many of you, if not most or all, are going to disagree with a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about. Remember that I'm completely jaded because I grew up watching the 1980 version. So to watch the new one, they're completely different beasts. Let me say that up front. Totally different productions, made in a different time and era, different actors. I was different because I was 10 and highly influential. So for me to see samurai for the first time as a child, which is what attracted me into the martial arts, which I've been doing ever since, is very different than you out there who might be young watching this new version and having no clue about the old. So everything I say is through the lens of an old guy who's 54 years old, who grew up as a child infatuated with this series. I know the 1980 series inside and out 100 times over. I know that it is nowhere near as good as the new one as far as interpreting the book. It was just not the same. The new one, let me say up front, is far closer. So in that respect, it earns respect. How did I like the new one? It was good. It was really good. There were parts of it I loved and parts of it I was bored with. And again, I'm comparing it to the old one. But for a lot of the television nowadays, I thought it was very, very well acted, very well written. The costumes were good, but I wrote an entire list, as you can see, of pros and cons, in my opinion, from the old to the new. And I'm going to do this as a comparison, not just to review the new, but to compare the old to the new, in my opinion. So you old guys out there probably will have more in common than what I'm saying. Okay. 2024 Shogun, different beast, whole different production. I like that it came from much more of a Japanese perspective. That was a bonus on my part. A lot of internal dialogue in the characters, which in the old one was just kind of laid out flat. So the Japanese perspective was very clear in this version. A lot of different writers on this series compared to the old one. So when you get different writers, each episode has a very different flavor to it, a different tone, and that's not always good. There were one or two episodes in the middle I was a bit bored with. Nowhere near as much action in the new one as the old, but I liked the action. Great sets on the new one, great sets. Although I did not like the CGI in the background. It was obviously CGI. It was always dull, very, just nowhere near as good as the old one as far as realism, as far as sets. But the sets internally, beautiful. I think it was filmed in Canada. Great job with the sets, except for the background. And that's just to save money. Everything can be done on a computer now. In the old version, they had to build the ships. They had to build all the sets by hand. The Japanese people constructed every set. In the new one, you can just use Photoshop and animation to make it work. And it shows. It shows there's no depth compared to the old one. But good. Great costumes in the new one. Great costumes. The Toda character in this one, the Lady Toda, was far better in this one than the old one. She had real power in this one. I really liked the acting, the way she was using her voice inflections, just manipulating these guys. She had so much power in this one. Good shinobi scene with the house girl assassination attempt in this one. I loved that. I don't know what episode it was, 3 or 4. I love the idea that the lady around the house for years was the assassin. That was really good. That's true shinobi jitsu. It's not about the guys in the mask all the time. Father Martin Alvito in this one was very boring compared to the other one, and I'll get to it. Maybe I should just jump across. So I'm going to bounce back and forth between the old and the new. This is where it might get confusing for younger people. In the old one, the 1980 version, the sets were way better. And by better, I mean they were real. No CGI. They were way more colorful. The new one, it's like someone took the saturation and just said, let's cut it out. There was very little color. Costuming was good, but it wasn't bright. The old one was brighter, happier. You wanted to be in that Japan. In this new one, it was kind of dirty looking, which is good in a way. It's real, but the old one I was attracted to. I wanted to live in that. I wanted to live in Japan in the old one. And that had to do with the brighter costumes. The different factions had color codes and things. It was much easier to understand in the old one. No CGI in the old one. That's a bonus. That's never going to be When you don't have CGI, it's always going to be better. In the old one, you had Orson Welles narrating. Orson Welles narrating. So the beginning and the ending in the old one were far better, far stronger. In the old one, I just felt like when Orson Welles was narrating at the end with Toranaga, with Mifune, I felt bad for Blackthorn. I felt great for Mifune. I felt uplifted at the end. On this one, it was kind of a downer for me. But it had positives, a lot of good ones. In the old one, Richard Chamberlain was way better, in my opinion, on screen. I like Cosmo Jarvis. I'm sure he's a very nice man, but he came across, and I think this was by design, he came across as kind of dumb and completely out of it. Therefore, his screen presence was drab for me. Good parts, of course. He had good scenes, but overall, Chamberlain blew him away as far as Chamberlain was... drew you in. You were rooting for Chamberlain. And in the old one, maybe this is a negative thing, they pushed Chamberlain in the front. He was the main character. In this new version, Blackthorn was pushed to the side as just a side pawn piece, which I think was probably way closer to the book. But in the old one, you were rooting for Chamberlain. You felt that he was in love with Mariko. He had a way better rapport with Toranaga as Mifune. In the old one, he was better looking. He was just a more attractive character. In the new one, they have poor Cosmo wearing these big fake blue. Why did they have him with contact lenses? You see him in real life, he's got brown eyes, and they were so saturated. I'm like, he looks drunk or drugged up half the time. This is just, again, my opinion. So for me, he looked like the old Rankin Bass cartoon from the Hobbit in 1970-something. He reminded me of Gollum from... the way he looked. Chamberlain, I just thought had more screen presence, and the voice on the new actor I didn't like as much. But again, this is personal opinion. He's what I've heard of a great stage actor. So in overall, he did the best he could do. But Chamberlain way better in the old. In the old one, you had John Rhys Davies, who played Gimli in the Lord of the Rings. As Rodriguez. The Rodriguez character was just nothing in this one. So John Rhys Davies blows away anything new. Alan Badell as Father Dalacqua. Alan Badell just popped off the screen in 1980. He had such a screen presence. But the characters, I understand, in the new one were designed to be more internal dialogue. You had to think more, which was good. Asano was okay as Kashigi Yabu in the new one. I think he had a good character arc in the new one. He's a great actor. So Kashigi Yabu in the old one I thought was better because he was done by Frankie Sakai, who was a comedian. So Frankie Sakai was more joyful, more likable in the old one. He was colorful. His seppuku scene was better, although this seppuku scene at the end was very good as well. Frankie Sakai, again, I'm jaded, but the old characters, I thought, in the old series had much more joy, much more, I can't explain it. They just, and again, I think it's because I saw the old one dozens of times, so I'm more attracted to those characters because they're in my mind. The new one, I've only watched this once. I'm sure if I go back and watch it every year, again and again, the characters are going to be way more impressionable and likable on the new series. So I'm obviously partial to the old. Now, in the new one, they didn't explain Blackthorn learning the language at all. In the old one, Chamberlain and Mariko spent like an hour going over the Japanese language and how to speak it and the negative versus the positive. So you were drawn into Japan more. You were drawn into learning the language in the old version with Chamberlain. In the new one, all of a sudden, season whatever it is, he's speaking fluent Japanese. He's understanding all these words. I'm like, that would take so many years to do. So that was a negative for me, as they didn't explain any of the language. But in the book, that wasn't essential. We're talking about the politics in the book, not the language. We talked about the low saturation of color in the new one versus the old, the blurry CG backgrounds. Usama Uji was much better arc in this one. The boat scene at the end, which they dumped the ashes, very good. I thought that her character was fleshed out way better in this new one. Lady Ochiba had real power. Lady Ochiba was superior in this one. In the old one, she was barely mentioned. And the words Lady Ochiba was saying was clearly manipulative. She had such a good screen presence. Great actress in the new one. Anna Sawai, how did she do as Mariko? Well, Yoko Shimada will always be my Mariko. I grew up with a massive crush on her, as everyone around me did. However, Anna Sawai did a good job. I really liked her subtle political power. She had real power through her words. And very little expressions, but everything she said had meaning. She didn't say a lot. They really pulled back the love scenes in the new one versus the old. She did a good job. She wasn't overly woke, you know, and she was using her naginata. I like how they did that. And she was going up against the guards, and she's at some point she's like, I cannot get through these powerful male samurai guards. I am defeated here. I cannot get through them. I love that because that's real. You know, nowadays with the writing, she would have killed everybody without blinking an eye, but I liked her power in this one. Her words, her political actions were through her intelligence was her power. That was great. That was great. And the way they did it in the new one, with her having more power in the background with the Christian church, I liked. I liked how she did the stuff at the end with the burning of the ship. Working with Toranaga, that was all implied. You didn't see any of that behind the scenes till it was revealed in the last episode. Good. Toranaga's inner dialogue. So how did we do with Toranaga's? Well, I have two words. Toshiro Mifune as Toranaga in 1980. No one will touch him. He is Toranaga. He will always be. However, Hiroyuki Sanada knocked it out of the park in this one. You could see his facial expressions. His inner dialogue was clear the entire series. That man had gravitas. He was the main character in this Shogun, which it should be. He was Toranaga great. The way he would just sit there and think when people were talking to him, and you could see his jaw tense up or a slight raising of the eyebrow. He did brilliantly, and I know that he was very hands-on, very passionate about this particular production. So Hiroyuki Sanada, great. However, Toranaga as Mifune leapt off the screen. Even though he wasn't the main character, Toranaga was so powerful in the old one, you felt scared of him. You felt like this guy was really imposing. But overall, both Toranagas played very, very well. Let's see, the crew in the old one, you had the crew of Blackthorn. They were all different characters. You were kind of rooting for the crew. So they spent more time with the crew on the ship in the old one. The crew was just they were just thrown out in this one, which I thought was very negative. Again, the old one, Blackthorn, you were rooting for him. It was more about him going through, trying to save his crew, trying to explain his position in the world with Portugal and England, and the politics, around the old one. You had these minor characters like Alan Bedell as Father Delacqua. Damian Thomas as Father Elvito in 1980 was a great character with a huge arc with Richard Chamberlain. Those two together had real chemistry. The new one, Father Elvito, was very boring, just a complete nothing. He had no power. He could have literally been written out and you wouldn't have noticed a difference. Good actor, I'm sure, but nothing compared to the old. The shinobi scenes in the old one were pretty good with the ninja going into the castle. I thought those were better, just because I loved the Shokosugi kind of goofy stuff. But the shinobi at the end of this one, the guy that, remember the guy at the end, I think it was this episode, episode 10, talking about how he was a samurai and he was working for the team. That's true shinobi. He spent years behind enemy lines and he was with Toranaga feeding him information the whole time. Great on that. So Blackthorn, greater screen presence, no doubt in the old. The new guy did his best, I'm sure, but he just didn't do it for me. Frankie Sakai, more likable and joyful. So I'm coming from old and new. It's a very different perspective than most of you watching. If I look on here at the cast of the new one, Most of the young characters were not memorable. I loved Toda Hiromatsu in this one, the kind of sidekick of Toranaga, the guy that scene when he committed seppuku was so powerful. So he was played by Tokuma Nishioka as Toda Hiromatsu. That guy was really good in this series. In the old one, he was unmemorable. They really pushed up his character to really kind of show him and Toranaga discussing the politics and what he should do. And the fact that Toranaga allowed him to commit seppuku to keep the ruse going was an amazing emotional feeling for me. Great job. Buntaro. How was Buntaro in this one? Mariko's evil husband. Good. I mean, he was good in this one. I liked him. Abe Shinosuke was the new one. But the old Buntaro from 1980 was played by, Omi. Omi in the old one was way better. The way he worked with Blackthorn. Omi, you rooted for him to get the girl at the end. So Omi, who beheaded the guy on the first beach scene in the old one, Omi was a much better character in the old one. In the new one, he was, Father Vink was not seen. Who played? Oh, Friar Domingo. Michael Hordern in the old 1980 was so good in the jail. Michael Hordern was a great character in the jail with Blackthorn, describing about Japan and waiting his death. He was really good. Captain Ferrara in the old one was just a character that leapt off the screen. Captain Ferrara in this one, non-existent. Non-existent. John Rhys-Davies, how can you beat him? Okay, Hideo Takamatsu played Buntaro. In the 1980 version, Buntaro had a larger presence. They showed him more with Mariko with the tea scene. Although the tea scene in this one was very good, the way that Mariko shut down her husband, that was really, really good. But in the old one, Buntaro with his master of archery, I thought was a more scary character. I mean, when he walked on the screen, you were scared of him. So Buntaro in the old one was better. A lot of these characters, again, Orson Welles narrating just gave a gravitas and a present to the old one. That's pretty much the characters in those. So I would give this new series 7 or 8 out of 10. Really good. I mean, that for me, that's good. Because most television is absolute junk nowadays, and they've ruined Star Wars. So something like this that I can go back to and see a new version for you younger people out there who are seeing it for the first time. This is going to attract many of you into the martial arts, into the Japanese culture. So, and to go back and read about the real John Blackthorne and not the real, but the guy based off of Adams. You're going to go back and study some history now because you're attracted by this new one. Your new Mariko is going to be your new crush, things like that. Your new Blackthorne, you're going to like this guy better than Chamberlain because you're going to think Chamberlain's more of a cutout caricature, and I understand that. But I'm happy for you young people to get this series because I think it's very well made, very well written, greatly acted, mostly. And pretty good costumes, and as far as the accuracy of the Budo stuff, very accurate, very well done, very good attention to detail. Those of you like old farts like me who are still alive and like the old one better, that's why it's better. It's because that was our childhood. So the old one has a 10 out of 10 for me, even though there's some stereotyping and bad things in it. 10 out of 10. New one, about 8 out of 10. That's my opinion. What did you think? I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments about what characters you liked better. I'd just like to hear from you, and I'm going to read them too. I promise I will. Just tell me what you think. What did you think of the new one? Now, I'd love to hear from you old guys on the perspective of the old versus the new. That's my skew here. Is I'm more interested in hearing about the comparison of the two. And I suggest you go out and watch the old one with a fresh mind and tell me which characters you thought were better. A mix for me for both. Hey, thanks for listening to me vomit this stuff to you wherever you are. I appreciate you watching this, and I respect your opinion, and let's all agree Shogun was a win for all of us in 2024. I'm so happy they made the series. I don't think they'll make a second because it just wouldn't make sense. If they do, shame. If they do, it's about literally money and fame and power. Shogun should be, the book should close. Now go on to read Taipan and all of the others by James Clavell. And lastly, let me thank James Clavell for bringing us this series of books. That man was a master. So thank you, James. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Bye-bye.